Does that chair run on electricity? Or pity? The voice came loud and slow, thick with challenge, cutting through the gentle hum of Old Oak Cafe like a blade over silk. Claire Weller didn't flinch, not visibly, anyway. She was seated in her usual corner near the window, morning light casting soft lines across her lap, where a bowl of oatmeal steamed gently. The silver spoon in her hand hovered mid-air. Her auburn hair was pulled into a neat twist. A pale blue scarf looped around her wrist, hand-stitched, worn with time, and impossibly clean. Until now. Marcus Green, tall, broad, and built like an ex-linebacker, stepped forward with a slow swagger. His skin was deep bronze, his beard cut sharp. Behind him, Dre Martin and Antoine Bell, both men of color, both wrapped in the kind of restless energy that followed men who thought intimidation was a language, stood flanking his shadow. "Hey," Marcus said again, tapping the back of her wheelchair with the toe of his boot. I said, "Is this thing just for show, or do you really need the wheels?" The spoon dropped. A soft clink. Oatmeal sloshed. Claire reached down slowly, steady hands betraying none of the heat rushing up her neck. She said nothing. Behind the counter, the young barista froze, mid-wipe of a coffee cup. A man in a flannel jacket shifted uncomfortably at a table near the door, but didn't speak. No one did. Silence was how Brentford often handled discomfort. Let it sit, let it settle, and maybe it'd just go away. Marcus leaned down, lips close to Claire's ear. "Cat got your legs?" Laughter. Dre chuckled. Antoine smirked and muttered something about spare parts. Claire turned her head. Her eyes met Marcus's. Calm, green, unflinching. And that, more than anything, unnerved him. "You deaf too?" "I hear you," Claire said quietly. "I just don't see the need to respond to animals." The laughter stopped. "You got a mouth on you for someone who can't walk," Marcus muttered. Then came the final blow, small, childish, and cruel. He flicked the edge of the blue scarf with 2 fingers, hard enough to smear a dollop of oatmeal across its stitching. It didn't look like much, just a stain. But Claire's shoulders dropped half an inch. That scarf had been sewn by her mother in the last weeks of hospice. It had survived the crash that broke Claire's spine. It had been with her through therapy, through loneliness, through the empty porch of a house too quiet after loss. And now it was marked. Marcus straightened, laughing like he'd just told a good joke. Claire picked up the spoon again. Not to eat, just to hold it. Across the cafe, a boy maybe 9 or 10 stared at her from the booth near the window. His father was pretending to read a paper. The boy saw the whole thing, the tapping boot, the stained scarf, the way Claire didn't cry, and the way nobody moved. Claire glanced at the door, then at her phone. A single message sat unread from the night before. "Zaria, you still breathe, soldier?" Claire stared at it, then typed 2 words. "Claire, I need you." She didn't look up again, not even when Marcus slapped the back of her chair on the way out and muttered, "We'll see you around, Wheels." The bell above the cafe door jingled as the men left. The room breathed again. Claire didn't. She reached up, touched the edge of the stained scarf, and for the first time in 5 years, let her hand tremble. Outside, the sky over Brentford shifted from pale gray to hard steel. Miles away, a phone buzzed on a scratched nightstand, in a motel where the heater wheezed like a tired animal. Zaria Brooks opened her eyes. She had promised never to come back. But promises didn't mean much when someone you love whispered for help. And Claire Weller, pale-skinned, soft-spoken, and stronger than she knew, had never asked before. Zaria Brooks didn't knock. She pushed open the glass door of the Old Oak Cafe at exactly 9:41 a.m., wearing a black coat that had seen war zones and winter storms. The bell above the door gave its usual polite chime, but no one looked up, except Claire. Claire's eyes lifted, just a fraction. She hadn't touched her oatmeal. Her scarf, still stained, was tied neatly around her wrist, a silent act of defiance, or maybe remembrance. Her gaze met Zaria's with something between relief and guilt. Zaria, tall, broad-shouldered, with rich umber skin and coiled hair pulled into a tight bun, gave a short nod. That was all. She didn't smile. She walked like someone who didn't ask permission to take space, and the room felt it. The only black woman in the cafe, she moved through the silence with purpose. Some glanced, a few stared, no one spoke. She slid into the booth across from Claire and sat down slowly, dropping her duffel bag onto the bench with a soft thud. Her dog tags, cold against her chest, pressed lightly beneath her layers. "You came," Claire whispered. "I always come when called," Zaria replied. Her voice was deep, textured like gravel smoothed by time. "Even when you don't want me to." Claire looked down at her lap. "I didn't mean to pull you back here." "Doesn't matter." Zaria leaned back, eyes scanning the cafe. She recognized the silence. She'd heard it in tents after bombings, in kitchens after funerals. The kind of silence that pretended not to know. "They laughed," Claire murmured. "The whole room. Quiet, but they laughed. Or did nothing." Zaria said nothing. Her eyes caught the boy again, the same one who had watched yesterday. He was back, sitting with his father, pretending not to stare. "Did anyone say anything after?" Zaria asked. Claire shook her head. "I sent the message. I don't know why. Maybe I hoped you'd ignore it." Zaria's fingers brushed her duffel. She pulled out a small square of cloth, white, soft, neatly folded. She placed it on the table, pushing it toward Claire. "This isn't to replace what you lost," she said softly. "It's so you have something clean when you walk through fire again." Claire's eyes shimmered. She didn't touch the cloth right away. "They'll come back," she said. "I know," Zaria replied, "and they won't care that I have backup." Zaria let out a short breath. "I'm not backup. I'm a witness. There's a difference." Across the cafe, Marcus's voice rang out. He had entered with his usual stride, bold, brazen, dragging shadows behind him. Dre and Antoine flanked him like echoes. "Well, well," Marcus drawled. "Looks like our girl brought herself a bodyguard." Zaria didn't turn around. Claire did. She looked up, calm and steady. Her voice, though soft, carried. "You're not funny. You're not welcome. And you're not invisible anymore." A beat. Something in the room shifted. Chairs creaked. A spoon clinked. The waitress behind the counter paused mid-pour. Even the coffee machine hummed quieter. Zaria stood, not aggressive, not dramatic, just present. "We're not here to argue," she said, eyes fixed on Marcus. "But you're done making her feel small." Dre scoffed. "You think we're scared of some ex-military chick?" "No," Zaria said evenly. "But this might scare you." She reached into her coat and pulled out her phone. On the screen, a paused video grainy, clear enough. Marcus tipping Claire's chair, Dre laughing, Antoine's smirk, the words. "You went viral," she said. "Over 3,000 views since this morning. Brentford's most famous cowards." Marcus's face twitched. "You recorded us?" he barked. "No," Zaria said. "But someone did. A kid. Your reflection's finally louder than your mouth." Behind them, The young barista's lips parted. She didn't speak, but she stepped backward slowly, toward the storeroom. Antoine muttered, "Let's go." But Marcus didn't move. "You think likes and shares make you right?" Zaria didn't blink. "They make you seen." Marcus stared at Claire again. Her hands rested lightly on the folded scarf. She didn't tremble. "I'm going to let you finish your tantrum," Claire said quietly. "Then I'm going to keep living here, eating here, working here, because this is my town too." Marcus clenched his jaw. His muscles tensed, like a man winding up for something bigger, something darker. Zaria stepped forward, not touching him, not threatening, just standing close enough. "You've got 30 minutes, she said, voice calm, clear. "Use them wisely." The cafe held its breath. Then Marcus turned. His boots echoed as he walked out. Dre followed, muttering curses. Antoine paused just long enough to glance back at Claire, not with fear, but something close to recognition. When the door slammed shut, the cafe exhaled. Claire's spoon clinked against her bowl. Zaria sat down again, slow and steady. "I was shaking," Claire admitted. "I know," Zaria said, "but you didn't let them see it. That's power." From the back, the boy watched. He tugged at his father's sleeve. The man glanced at Zaria, then at Claire. He gave a single nod. No words, just witness. By the time the cafe doors closed behind Marcus and his crew, the old oak had slipped into a strange quiet, not the everyday hush of clinking spoons and murmured orders, but a silence thick with unfinished business. Claire stayed seated, her posture straight, her scarf still stained. Zaria remained across from her, fingers wrapped around a mug of lukewarm coffee. Neither woman said much at first, but the room around them shifted. People who had looked away yesterday now glanced too long. Some with guilt, some with curiosity, a few with something else, resentment, maybe, the old kind that hides behind, "Can't we just move on?" Zaria caught it all. She always had. She didn't need them to clap. She needed them to remember. Claire finally spoke. "I didn't know it'd feel like this." "Like what?" Zaria asked. "Like I was both too visible and not seen at all." Zaria nodded. "That's the paradox. They ignore the pain, but they remember the moment you push back." Claire looked toward the window. Outside, the sidewalk bore traces of winter-thin slush, salted edges. A delivery truck idled across the street. "They'll retaliate," she said. "Probably," Zaria replied. "Cowards don't go down quiet." Claire gave a soft, bitter smile. "Maybe I should have stayed home." Zaria leaned forward. Her voice dropped, low and firm. "You've been staying home for 5 years. This question mark, this is showing up. They weren't ready for it." Claire didn't answer. The barista came by quietly, refilling their mugs without speaking. She lingered a moment too long, then placed a small note beside Claire's saucer before walking away. Claire opened it. 2 words, scribbled in hurried pen. "Thank you." Her breath caught. "You see," Zaria said gently, "it starts small, but it echoes." That night, Claire parked her chair in the corner of her apartment, staring at the glow of her laptop screen. She hadn't posted anything. She hadn't shared the video. But it was out there. She'd seen the tags, the comments. Some were cruel, predictable. This is what happens when victims play heroes. Why bring race into it? Typical activist setup. But others glowed. "I served. I see you. Disgusting behavior. Thank you for standing up. Claire, you're not alone." She scrolled through the thread in silence, her fingers hovering over the keys. Finally, she opened a blank post. No hashtags, no politics, just, You don't have to shout to be brave. Sometimes staying in your seat is the loudest thing you can do. She hit send. The next morning, her doorbell rang. On the ground sat a box. No note. Inside a fresh scarf. Pale blue, neatly stitched. Claire held it to her chest for a long moment before laying it beside the stained one, as if honoring both, the wound and the witness. Back at the cafe, the change was subtle. A man at the counter offered a stiff nod. An older woman left a sticky note by the register. "We saw. We're sorry." But then midday came. So did retaliation. Someone had egged the front window. Yolks dripping, shells cracked. Across the glass, in red marker, "Stay in your lane. Wheels." The manager, a short, balding man named Keith, was already outside, pale and sweating. He had a broom in one hand, a cell phone in the other. "I'm so sorry," he muttered when he saw Claire and Zaria approach. "We didn't know this would get out of hand." Zaria raised an eyebrow. "You mean you didn't think anyone would care?" He didn't respond. "I think it's best," he continued, avoiding eye contact, "that you two maybe take a break from coming in. Just until this cools off." Claire didn't speak. Her jaw clenched, eyes focused on the red smear across the glass. Zaria stepped forward, slow and controlled. "You're asking her to disappear to keep others comfortable," she said. "Is that the new policy?" Keith stammered. I have regulars, families. They don't want trouble." Zaria's voice was calm, but icy. "And Claire is trouble?" "She's attention, and not the good kind." Claire finally turned away. The cold wind caught her scarf, whipping it across her shoulder. She didn't fix it. "Is this cowardice?" she asked softly. "Or just fear dressed in manners?" Zaria didn't answer right away. Instead, she crouched slightly so their eyes met level. "This town was taught to be quiet," she said. "You untaught it. That makes you dangerous." Claire looked back at the cafe, the smears, the glass. "Are you scared?" she asked. "I used to be," Zaria answered. "Now I'm just ready." She reached into her coat and pulled out a small notebook. Inside were names, contacts, people from her unit, old allies, new friends, people who didn't just fight, but remembered why. Claire looked at the list. "You're calling reinforcements?" Zaria shook her head. "No," she said. "I'm calling in witnesses." By the following afternoon, the video had crossed 15,000 views. Claire didn't post a follow-up. She didn't respond to the articles or the messages flooding her inbox. She just watched as her face, her stillness, her scarf became a symbol no one asked her permission to use. And then came his video. Grainy, low resolution, filmed from a dirty sidewalk. Marcus stood in front of the Old Oak Cafe, arms folded, jaw set tight. Behind him, Dre and Antoine loomed like loyal echoes. "She thinks a few comments online make her a hero?" Marcus said into the camera. "This is our town. Ain't no army coming to Brentford." He ended the clip with a smirk, the kind meant to provoke. Zaria saw the video in the cab of her truck. She didn't curse. She didn't scowl. She just sat there, dog tags resting cold against her chest. Then slowly, she hit record. Her voice was calm, slower than usual. "This isn't about heroes," she said into the lens. "This is about decency, about what you do when someone pushes the line too far. You're right, Marcus. Brentford doesn't have an army, but you're about to learn what honor looks like." She paused. "You've got 30 minutes. She hit send. The first engine to roll into the Old Oak's back lot was an SUV matte gray. No vanity plates, government-issued tires. Then came two more, not loud, not fast, just sure. Inside the cafe, Keith, the manager, nervously wiped the already spotless counter. Marcus, seated in his usual booth, hadn't moved since morning. Dre was there too, spinning a toothpick between his fingers. Antoine stared out the window, legs bouncing. The bell above the door chimed once, then twice. 3 figures entered. None wore uniforms. They didn't need to. The first was broad-shouldered, older, with skin dark like Zaria's and eyes sharp like stone. The second moved quieter, lean and clean-shaven, his jacket bearing a worn patch from the 82nd Airborne. The third, a woman with silver streaks in her braids and the kind of posture that came from years standing between chaos and order, closed the door behind them without a word. They walked like purpose, like gravity. Zaria rose from her seat and nodded. "You're late." "Traffic," the older man replied, deadpan. Claire, seated beside her, didn't stand, but she lifted her chin. "Thank you for coming." The woman veteran stepped forward, placed a firm hand on Claire's shoulder. Not hard, not soft, just enough. Then they turned toward Marcus's booth. He stood slowly. "What, you gonna teach me a lesson?" he scoffed. The older veteran set a folder on the table. It wasn't thick, but it was official, stamped and signed. "Regional Veterans Board," he said plainly. "Formal complaint filed, recorded, logged, under review." Marcus's grin wavered. The woman stepped up. "You harassed a disabled civilian in public," she said. "On record, mocked her, threatened her, followed her. Then you mocked a veteran who served beside people just like us." She leaned slightly forward. "You think Brentford will protect you because it's small? It won't. Small towns remember which side of history they stood on, especially when the footage is this clear." Dre shifted. Antoine looked away. Marcus didn't move, until Zaria spoke. "We told you 30 minutes. We meant it." Claire rolled forward. No dramatics, no shaking, just presence. She stopped in front of Marcus, her eyes meeting his. "I'm not here for an apology," she said. "I'm here to make sure you never forget I existed, that you tried to humiliate me and failed." Silence. Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The older veteran leaned in, his voice low. "You made a lot of noise, son, but it only takes one woman rolling forward to make you quiet." They turned then, all 5, Claire, Zaria, the 3 veterans, and walked out the door into the cold afternoon light. On the bench outside the cafe, the same bench Claire once rolled past without stopping, someone had left a folded blanket. Pale blue, same stitching pattern as her scarf. No note, just memory. They sat there together quietly. No speeches, no cameras, no victory songs. Just breathe. Inside, Marcus hadn't moved. His jaw clenched. His fingers twitched. His eyes stared at the door like it might open again and finish what had been started. But it didn't. Because the line had already been drawn, and Claire Weller had stayed on the right side of it. Brentford didn't erupt the next day. There were no front-page headlines, no town meetings, no apologies scrawled in permanent marker on cafe walls. But something had shifted quietly, uncomfortably, like a foundation settling beneath old wood. Marcus's motorcycle shop was closed. Officially, it was for repairs. But everyone knew better. The glass had been intact. The lights had worked. The only thing broken was the silence he'd counted on to protect him. Dre stopped showing up at the corner bar where he'd usually nurse cheap whiskey and louder stories. Antoine was spotted packing up the trunk of a dented Chevy, saying nothing to the neighbor who offered a simple "good luck" without asking where he was going. At the Old Oak Cafe, the air felt lighter. Keith, the manager, didn't speak much to Claire. But he did nod when she came in. And he didn't flinch when Zaria followed her presence as steady as ever. That morning, Claire found her usual table, already cleared, a fresh cup of black coffee waiting, steam curling like a promise. Next to it, a sticky note taped to the table, reserved for courage. Zaria smiled at it without comment. Claire ran her fingers over the ink, like she needed to be sure it was real. The two women sat for a long time, not needing to fill the quiet. Eventually, Claire asked, "Do you think this is over?" Zaria took a slow sip. "No." Claire nodded. "Me neither." "But it's turning," Zaria said. "You can feel it." Claire looked around. An elderly man in a Carhartt jacket met her eyes and gave a small nod. A young woman holding a toddler leaned against the counter, her gaze soft, uncertain, but not dismissive. "They don't know what to say?" Claire murmured. "They don't have to," Zaria replied. "They just have to stop pretending it didn't happen." A new barista, college-aged, nervous, trying too hard, fumbled with the espresso machine. Claire watched her, remembering her own first job at a bakery, before the crash, before the chair, before the long quiet. She stood, rolled over, and offered gentle help. "Steam wand's got a delay," Claire said. "Wait a beat before you pull." The girl blinked, grateful. "Thanks. I'm still learning." "So was I," Claire said. That afternoon, Zaria walked alone to the town square. It was small, just a fountain, a few benches, a war memorial that listed names in bronze too faded to read from a distance. She sat there for a while, letting the cold find its way through her sleeves. She opened her notebook again, the one filled with names. At the top, she wrote 3 more. Claire Weller, the boy with the phone. Whoever left the scarf, she flipped the page and wrote a single line beneath them, still showing up. Later that evening, Claire returned home to find an envelope in her mailbox. No return address. Inside, a printout of a social media post. It was Zaria's video, captioned simply, "Honor doesn't need a headline." Beneath it, hundreds of comments. Some angry, some proud, some confused, and one that stuck out, circled in red pen. "My daughter's in a chair, too. I used to tell her to stay quiet. Not anymore." Claire folded the page, slid it between the pages of her journal, and exhaled. That weekend, the Old Oak held its first community open mic night in years. Keith hadn't planned to, but something in the air pushed him forward, maybe guilt, maybe hope. The cafe was full. Not packed, but enough. Claire didn't read a poem. She didn't tell a story. She just sat at her usual table, scarf tied clean, fingers wrapped around a coffee mug. Zaria sat beside her, and when the teenage boy who had filmed the first video stepped up to the microphone, hands trembling, voice cracking, and said, "Some people think courage is loud, but I saw what it looks like when it's quiet." The room stilled. Claire didn't cry, but she smiled, for the first time, fully. And Zaria whispered, "That's the sound of something ending." "No," Claire whispered back. "That's the sound of something beginning." 2 weeks later, the sign above the Old Oak Cafe changed. Not completely, the wooden frame stayed, still weathered with age. But the letters had been repainted, just enough to tell the truth. Grace House. The new name wasn't shouted. It wasn't in bold lights or ribbon-cutting ceremonies. But it was there, in plain font, as steady as the women who had earned it. Inside, the corner table now bore a brass plaque, reserved for courage. Claire Weller sat there most mornings, same as always. Sometimes with coffee, sometimes just with breath. The scarf now cleaned, repaired, but still carrying the faded mark of that day, stayed looped around her wrist, like a memory she refused to edit. Zaria joined her on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She was helping Keith apply for a Veterans Employment Grant. Not because she liked Keith, she didn't, but because change, like healing, required patience and hands that were willing to stay. Across the cafe, life moved on. The espresso machine still hissed. Orders still got mixed up. But people looked at each other more now, not with fear, with acknowledgement. Even the boy with the phone, his name was Jonah, came in often. He always waved, and Claire always waved back. Outside, the bench remained. It had been cleaned, repainted. Someone had added a small brass plate to the backrest. Zaria found it one morning while waiting for Claire. It read, "To those who roll forward, even when the road is cracked." She didn't touch it. She just stood there, letting the winter air bite her cheeks, letting the words soak in like warmth beneath cold metal. That afternoon, Claire and Zaria hosted the first meeting of their new community program, Wheels Forward, a mentorship group for young women with disabilities, not about inspiration, not about pity, about voice, presence, navigation. The room wasn't full. 5 girls, all different. One wore sunglasses indoors, another clutched a sketch pad like a shield. Zaria opened the meeting. Claire stayed quiet at first. Then slowly she told them a story. Not about being harassed, not about going viral, just about a morning where she wanted to disappear and didn't. And about the woman who showed up not to rescue her, but to remind her that courage isn't loud, it's consistent. The girl with the sketch pad raised her hand. "How do you stop being afraid?" Claire thought for a moment. "You don't," she said. "You just show up anyway." Later that evening, they sat outside, same bench, same cold, same sky. No parades, no fanfare, just 2 women, 2 histories, one truth between them. Zaria reached into her coat, pulled out a small item, a dog tag, strung on fresh cord. She handed it to Claire. Claire read the engraving. Still here, still standing. She smiled. "I'll wear it," she said, "when I'm ready." "No rush," Zaria replied. They sat in silence for a long while. People passed by. Some nodded, some didn't, but every one of them saw. As the sun dipped below the line of rooftops and the sky turned the color of steel wrapped in light, Claire whispered a final question. "Do you think we made a difference?" Zaria didn't answer right away. Then she turned, eyes firm. "No," she said. "I think we made a start." And together, without fanfare, they rolled and walked forward, not into a perfect town, but into one that had learned finally how to look, how to listen, and maybe how to change.